Hello everyone, my name is Antonio Estigarraga, and with my classmates Alejandro, Alejandra Franco, and Florencia Codas, we're going to talk to you about Johann Henrik Pestalozzi, a father of modern pedagogy. We're going to talk about who he was, his focus and thoughts on education and his way of thinking, the methodology and legacy to the education and pedagogy. So who was Johann Pestalozzi? Well, Johann was born in Zurich, Switzerland on January 12, 1746. He is considered a father of modern pedagogy, reformer of traditional education, and one of the first modern thinkers. He was born in the middle class thanks to his father, who was a renowned doctor in Old Switzerland. Nevertheless, his father died young at 33 years old, and Johann and his mother, they struggled and they lived in poverty for a lot of years. He was working on his holidays with his grandfather, helping the poor in the countryside, and he encountered there the real poverty. He noted that young children working precariously in the fields and factories where they were mispaid and mistreated. And he had a failed attempt to become a clergyman like his grandfather, but that did not stop him to open his first business called Neuhof, rescuing children from the streets. The business consisted of transforming cotton to thread and thread to fabric, and after that sell the fabric. He taught them about economic awareness and autonomy. Nevertheless, he had a fight with uh, a sponsor and he found bankrupt. Afterwards, he became a writer at a newspaper and he wrote about human nature and the problems it faced towards development. In 1800, he managed a school for the middle class in the Burgdorf Castle. Thanks to him, it was transformed into a public school, allowing poor people to study. He was chosen as a Swiss representative in Paris to convince Napoleon about his approach and to finance Swiss education. Nevertheless, he failed, and consequently, he was fired from the school and his dream work. He died of cancer at the age of 81 in the year 1827. One of his quotes was, "Education is natural, harmonious, and progressive development of man's innate powers."
Hello everyone, I am Florencia Colas and I am going to talk about Johann's main purposes of education and a few of his theories and way of thinking. Here we have his main purposes of education. First, we have autonomous freedom because he wanted to achieve the students' freedom through autonomous thought, meaning that teachers should only act as a guide for them and attend to their needs. And the student should feel confident and never intimidated. Second, he also wanted to accomplish humanization because he thought that men's humanization is and should always be one of the biggest purposes of education. Third, he based his educational process on three dimensions: the use of the head, the hands, and the heart. These three dimensions are interrelated, and Pestalozzi considered them of vital importance for the development of children and the development of their skills for life and their workplace. In the first place, we have the head, whose function is to distinguish the way things are. Second, the author considers the heart, referring, of course, to the feelings. And the third dimension will be the hands, that he said have the function of forming oneself. Because let's remember that he was a naturalist who based their teachings on observation and experience. Now, his fourth purpose of education was to attain perfection, because he thought that people can accomplish perfection through the development of all the capacities. In the fifth place, he also said the educational path should be instinctive, social, and moral. Being instinctive, the category in which the family is in charge, because Pestalozzi shows great importance to families as primary educators of their children, since they are the first with whom the child comes into contact, and this can have a negative or positive influence on them. He thought that the mother's affection is key in the development of children. Second, being social. In this part, he refers to school education. Even so, the author considered that education should also take place in other places and not only in school. For example, in families, which is the child's first socializing agent and has a great influence on them. And finally, we have morality or being moral, a process in which humanity is in charge. Um, in the next slide, we can see some of his characteristics. He focused on empowering and educating poor people. He also wanted to attain equality for them. His philosophy of education was realism because he thought that reality was objective, composed of matter and form, and based on natural law. Therefore, as mentioned before, we can say that he was a naturalist and a Rousseau disciple that thought that learning should be developed through observation and practical methods. Here we have a quote, which is a great example of his naturalist theories based on realism. He said, "All learning must start from the experience and interest of the child. Nothing that the child could not observe should be taught." Although we can say that he was also into existentialism, besides realism, because he defended freedom and individuality at any cost, and he tried to inculcate these qualities in his students. Here we have these other two quotes. The first one refers to his idea of freedom. "The greatest victory a man can win is victory over himself." And the second one refers to his idea of individualism. "The circle of knowledge commences close round a man and then stretches out concentrically."
Hello everyone, this is Alejandro, and as Florencia mentioned, I'm going to talk about Johann Heinrich's theory and methodology. His methods were mostly based in shapes, numbers, and names. He will focus on shapes by teaching his students to observe, measure, draw, and write all the shapes that they would observe in the environment. This would improve the students' sensory skills. Then he will also teach about metric and numeric relationships by exposing children to make him a separation of objects into individual units, which is very familiar to us since we did this in elementary school for learning the basic operations. Finally, he will also focus in vocabulary for providing students with the ability to communicate with each other and to transmit and receive information. Considering all this, we can say that this methodology was visibly logical, which can be linked to perennialism theory. This theory was rooted in realism and is taken to transmit the enduring truth and values of the culture by providing students with fundamental skills.
Hello everyone, my name is Alejandra Franco and I'm about to talk to you about the legacy of Johann Pestalozzi. His legacy was based on the pedagogical ideas that he created during his lifetime, which were numbers, which corresponded to the use of words, and the idea that from simple numbers, more complicated numbers and ideas could be made, the form of teaching, which is the observation of surroundings, from which by observing and analyzing, one could gain a simple explanation of the objects and materials that compose our surroundings. And language, which is the form in which words, sounds, and grammar are made and perceived by the individuals, and the idea that run to represent objects and materials. His general axis consisted in the education of both genders, since he believed that it was important that both men and women learn equally, and the idea of creative and productive education. He also presented ideas of moral, religious, and family forms into his teachings, and the idea that depending on the environment in which a person is brought up, may have an effect on the relationships and the person itself, and the idea of altruism. And now I present you the meme of the day. Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi, the other fathers of pedagogy.
Thank
With
you for your
that, we can